There certainly was fear. I communicated that to my team. If this continues, if the market stays this slow, we're going to be forced to lay people off eventually. And that was one of the scariest times in business, but also probably one of the most fulfilling. Hey guys, it's Kurt with HouseScan Inspections.
Owns the #1 grossing home inspection company in Northeast Florida. Kurt is a family man, travels the world, one of the most competitive people out there.
Nothing like coming back from down against somebody and coming back and beating them.
Takes on any challenges that he has with a smile on his face.
Let's go, breaking world records!
He just loves living every single day to the absolute fullest. He shows up with a smile on his face and love in his heart. I feel like there's this loneliness epidemic. It can get lonely at times, sitting at home working on something.
There was a loneliness, especially the early days of business. I think a lot of people lose, their friends at that stage of life.
What are you grateful for?
The gift that we have to wake up every day and to make a difference in this world.
Kurt, what I really appreciate about you is you live authentically yourself. It doesn't matter what anyone says. It doesn't matter what society says. You have this inner compass, this inner knowledge, and you do it for yourself. You do it for your family, and you just live you every single day. And I feel like that's what the fulfilled being is all about. It's about living your own moral compass, living your own internal compass. And in life, we have challenges. In life, we have obstacles. We can't be happy all the time. We can't be joyous all the time. But if we have that deep sense of meaning, that deep sense of fulfillment, that deep inner compass, we're going to wake up every day and be like, you know what? Today's a day, man. And so you have that mentality, you have that gratitude, you have that compass. And I really, really, really respect that about you.
Nice, man. Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. So jumping into a question for you. I believe that our why is so important in life. And specifically, I want to ask you about your why in business, because you've been so successful, right? You've built HouseScan to be the top inspection company in all of Jacksonville by sales, by culture, by just what you've done in this community through that.
Mm-hmm.
And different people build different businesses for different reasons, but I feel like you just have a different perspective on this. So,
yeah,
Kurt, what was your why when you started HouseScan? Is that still the same why today?
Yes and no. I would say that, thinking back to the early days, as my first venture really into anything significant, I think it was maybe more so just to, prove that I can, run a business and, start something and do something, right? Fast forward to today, obviously we're, much larger and have done a lot of good things. But it, really the first thing that I think of, and it's probably going to be a significant portion of our conversation today, is just about value. We spoke before this podcast just about value and delivering value to people. And that is very much how I live my life, how I run my business, what I think about all the time. If I think about, folks in their early days, that are starting a business, you hear all the time, oh, I can make so much money doing that. Or I can, if I, sell residential real estate, I can make, $200,000 a year. Or if I do, whatever it is, oh, I can make so much money. And I just think that's the complete opposite way that any business or any person should approach business. Cause it's just, it's so superficial. There's no meaning or deeper anything there. And I firmly believe that people should do business and help people and do whatever that, build whatever the product or or perform whatever the service is to help people make their lives better and bring them value. Like, I think that's the reason for business. And I think, I'm a pretty staunch, like, free market capitalist, type person, that, believes that, the world that we're living in, the reason that we have the quality of life that we do is because there's entrepreneurs that have, took risks and made investments to try to make somebody's life better.
So with that, talk about providing value and how some people look at starting a business, right? Like, there might be someone that's 20 years old right now that wants to start a business, and they're looking at, like, I want to start this drop shipping business because I make so much money, and they might be watching some other YouTube channels on that.
Short-lived, not sustainable.
Not sustainable, but how, like, was that a mentality that you had to develop? Was that something that you were just born with? Like, if someone's sitting there and they're, like, having those thoughts, like, is it just like an easy thing to do, or like how is your perspective in that?
So I think that whole perspective was, like, really shaped in college. So I went to Penn State. I got an engineering degree, specifically industrial engineering. And through that program, it, it's basically an engineering discipline that's in the middle of business and engineering. So, like, statistics heavy, process heavy, systems heavy. Like, so really what that major is, like, geared for is, like, people going into manufacturing or going into, like, large service corporations that, you might be providing insurance for, hundreds of thousands of clients, and you find the best way to make it the most efficient, fastest, strongest, cheapest, easiest process or experience or whatever for the customer. And, like, that whole world, those few years going through that degree, and then a few internships, and then a few jobs out of college, and just thinking about that stuff nonstop. I mean, that's totally, I think, what shaped, my thought process around value.
But so it's interesting, right? Because, like, I studied business, right? And it's like, maybe it wasn't as process oriented, and maybe the view of it is a little different. Yeah, in that sense. But it just seems like it's, like, second nature to you, where it's like deeper than just that. Cause, like, I'm sure there's some engineers out there that went through that degree, right, and came out at the end. They're like, all right, sweet, now I've got the tools to go make a business and make money. Is there something, like, deeper foundationally for you? Because it seems so natural and intuitive.
Yeah, I mean, as we're thinking through this, there was a lot in my life that kind of got me to where I'm at today, as is with anybody, right? Like, everything in your past makes you who you are. But, like, man, I was a nerdy kid growing up, that played a bunch of sports, but, like, essentially was like a nerdy kid. And I mean, I'm always playing, like, there was, like, a game, it was like, what was it? It was like The Sims, but for a factory setting. So, like, I'm tweaking processes, adding assembly lines, like, adding workers, and, like, and I love that game. And then I, eventually studied it and did a career in it. And that's, those sorts of things. And I was just, like, always working, always, like, tinkering, always building. I spent months probably in, like, Microsoft Excel, just, like, finding ways to make whatever I'm doing in life, like, easier, simpler, more efficient. Like for example, I ran a fantasy football league with a bunch of friends of mine, like, as a kid. We were probably 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And I had everything on a spreadsheet, all the players, all the points that they're scoring every week. And, like, most, like, 9-year-olds aren't doing that. So I don't know. There's just, like, a lot of stuff like that in my childhood that just kind of molded my mind like that. And my parents were also pretty darn amazing in just pushing, like, values and principles, to develop, like, I think a solid moral compass.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thinking about about that, you know, not all of our listeners are going to be just like engineering, thinking people, right?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
that naturally think that way. But what I do think though is a lot of our listeners can benefit from some of these systems and processes that you've created.
Mhm.
I know I have personally because I don't have that engineer brain, but
Sure.
I've gotten so much from you and your ideas. So I wanted to talk about a couple of those ideas that you have
Yeah.
or that you've had that have really impacted my life. So when we started the Accountability group, so for the for you listeners that don't know, or I guess none of you probably know at this point, but we get to talk about this now.
Mhm.
Kurt and I are in a group of 8 guys, and we meet every quarter. Well, sometimes more than every quarter, but definitely every quarter. And we go through our why. We go through what we care about life. And we're super intentional about what we're doing. And we get to really start with why and ask ourselves, why do I get up every single day and live my life? And that's where we start. And from there, we break down into different categories on what are those categories that matter in our life. So for me, I get up every day to live my life, to be the most fulfilled self I possibly can be, to live life, to enjoy, to just have a huge smile on my face and live life and be present and be spiritual. And so from there, I was able to understand my subcategories, right? And so spiritual, health, community, are just to name a few. Finances is another. And as I was going through that process and figuring out, what was important, those things came pretty intuitive. But in some subjects like finance, for example, like my personal finances, how do I know if I'm achieving what I choose to achieve in that category? Because we're tracking it, we're measuring it. And Kurt, it was your idea to track and measure these things. Kurt, it was your idea for me that gave me inspiration the first year to actually track and measure on a daily basis how I was doing in those categories with that tracking system. And it was super powerful and super impactful. The one thing that you had mentioned in that has stuck with me for the past few years is inputs versus outputs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like that blew my mind, changed my life. And I wanted to understand a bit better from you. What is inputs versus outputs?
Yeah. So I don't know where I developed this in my life, but it was essentially, it was probably somewhere in the engineering, like, space. But I started to realize that, like, anytime I ever set a goal, and it was just like some arbitrary goal, like, hey, I'm going to run so many miles this year, or, I'm going to, add 10 pounds of muscle, or, I'm going to get A's in school. Like that's an output, right? That's just the product of all of your inputs, all of your smaller little decisions that you're making. And what over years, I just realized that, like, that goal, it really doesn't matter at all, other than maybe to motivate you a little bit and remind you that, hey, I'm trying to get to whatever the end destination is. But to me, what I found, and I think it's probably different for everybody, but I found that it's all of those little smaller decisions, the little inputs, those 10,000 small decisions, those things add up to make your output, to make, to give you the result, whatever it might be. You can't run 100 miles in a year if you don't run, wake up every day and put it on your schedule and have a habit to run, a few miles every week, or, half a mile every morning, whatever it might be. And you could say that for like every single, goal that you have. But basically what I realized is that I'm setting these goals. I typically forget about them. And like, I, sometimes meet them. I sometimes don't. And in general, I just think that goal setting kind of sucks. Like it doesn't do a whole lot for most people. You know, you set your January 1 New Year's resolution. By halfway through January, everyone already forgets it, and nobody, you know, there's not a single person ever that's made it to the end of the year and like kept their New Year's resolution, right? And so I just think like it's the individual smaller habits, the inputs that are so much more important that create that result, whatever that might be. So whatever it is, like, you know, usually it's many, 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 many small decisions that create that output.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I was always an output goal setter. I was always like, you know, I want to.
I think most people are. They focus on the outputs, but they don't focus really on what are the small decisions, the inputs, all of the stuff that will get me there.
Yeah. And so at the end of the day, it's like you set a goal, and right, what's like the classic goal that like an entrepreneur or starting entrepreneur, I want $1 million in sales. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it's like, and then you're just so focused on that $1 million in sales. I think twofold. Sometimes people can set a goal of $1 million in sales, and then they set the inputs. They will go into that because they know, all right, I got to do these things to get there, which is definitely a helpful trajectory
for sure.
But I feel like if the main goal and the main idea is always on that output, we're always chasing this like external fulfillment.
100%
We're
agree.
chasing the outcome. And then when we hit that outcome, it's like, all right, we hit it, but we spent fucking a year or two just so focused on that outcome. I feel like we're missing our life and we're not enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I feel like when we focus on those inputs and we make that what it's about, like we can actually enjoy doing it. It's like that
it's
process.
like you're enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
Rather than like, you know, whatever the end result is. And it's like, let's say it is, okay, you ran your 100 miles for the year, you hit your $1 million sales goal. Once you hit it, like, okay, then what? Like, like to me, your fulfillment just like goes completely away because you accomplished your goal, but like, okay, then what? So yeah, to me, like the inputs, your habits, your journey, and just enjoying that and focusing on that and trying to get better every day. Like to me, that's, you know, I think it's a better way to run a business and to live life. But, you know, I think there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat.
What's like an input right now that you're really, really enjoying?
It's pretty boring, but I'm working heavily on like a full website redevelopment for our company. We've added a few services and just trying to like streamline everything for the customer to like hop on the website, get all the information that they need, and improve the scheduling process just to make it easier.
Is that boring to other people or is that boring to you?
Boring to other people. Yeah. Yeah. I love building things. And you know, like this is software, but you know, whether it's like the last few months, so we've rolled out 2 new inspection services and we're working on a third, and that does a lot of good things for our company and for our customers. But yeah, I mean, like there's like rolling out the service is the output, but then there's the 50 steps that it takes to get there. And it's, you know, making website edits. It's, you know, going through the education on teaching and training each employee, you know, what the service is, training the office staff on when somebody might need it, you know, how to explain it, you know, buying the equipment, you know, figuring out our inspection software and how to integrate these new services into it.
And then like 100 and you enjoy all those things?
Yes. I mean, to me, like it just, like it kind of goes back to this value thing. It's like I know that this is added value for our customer and for our employees, and so it's just like honestly, for me, I could probably count on one hand the number of days in the last 6-7 years that I've been in business that it has felt like work. Like it just feels like you're just like building something, and it, you know, it's, I don't know. It just, yeah, it comes pretty natural. But
it's interesting because I see some similarities with what I'm doing currently.
Yeah.
And so for you, I feel like you have such a deep sense of fulfillment and North Compass with this business and the idea of generating value to the customer, that all the components that go into it become fun because there's that North Star. It's like you're on a mission. Like it's like really, really cool. And with the way that you frame things, I feel like with that idea of value generation, like I feel like you could probably be happy building like any type of business
For sure.
because it's all value creation, and it all ties into like your deep sense of purpose, which is special. I found it different for myself. Like my big underlying why isn't like, I guess, value creation in the general sense.
Yep.
But I'm finding so much fulfillment right now with this podcast because I just love personal growth. And to me, I'm like obsessed. I'm obsessed with personal growth. I'm obsessed with having these types of conversations and being able to help people grow, like provide value in this respect, right? Like to me, it's like providing value in something that deeply means something to myself. And so I think something that could be valuable for the listeners to understand is like, if you're thinking about starting a business and you're thinking about doing something, like, are you a more general, like, hey, I just like providing value in general? Or is there something that like means something a lot to you, so that when the times get tough, when things go wrong, when, you know, you might have some components that exact component is like, you know, did I love like figuring out all the like mic equipment and, you know, all the like technical aspects of the podcast. Like it wasn't my favorite. Like I prefer the creative aspect of it, but like I find joy and fulfillment in it because I'm on a mission.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, there's certainly things like in my business that, you know, I'm not waking up like, you know, running out the door, like ready to like, you know, do whatever it is.
I'm ready to do taxes.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No, yeah. Screw that stuff. But no, like I would say like, yeah, just in general, like, and then like another term for this whole like adding value, you know, word is like, it's just like helping people. Like that's what it comes down to is, I just see it as making people's lives better. And, you know, from the very early days of my business, where it was pretty much like the inspiration behind the company was like basically a bunch of people in my family, from, you know, my wife's family, that all had poor inspection experiences, and I had poor home inspection experiences myself. And so there was a laundry list of, you know, 10 or 15 like pain points that, you know, we all as customers had. And so before I ever did a single inspection, it was trying to figure out how to eliminate or make, you know, to reduce those pain points, just to make a better experience for the customer, right? Which all came natural to me with my previous, you know, career in manufacturing and, you know, just thinking about value all the time. But that's what it comes down to, is just making the product or the service better. Now we got, you know, a ton of good feedback early on, and I, you know, I knew that we were onto something and that we were like making a better experience and a more valuable, you know, positive experience for the customer. And then I heard from, you know, some of the Instagram, you know, big talking heads, you know, the more business folks. But then I kept hearing this message that was like, hey, it's your duty, you know, if you do provide value, to get it out to as many people as you can and help as many people in this world. And so that was really like this, like the scaling, you know, the service piece. And I felt like it was my duty to hire more people, you know, buy more trucks and like get the service out to more people. And so it's been good. Yeah.
So dealing with stress, right? This is something that there might be some people out there that don't feel stress, but I would guess 99% of people feel stress at some point, right?
Yep.
And I feel like your ability to handle and manage and continue moving forward through those times is like second to none.
Yep.
Like, dude, you like, and I could tell like you feel it, but it just doesn't stop you.
100%.
Like, is there like a technique, a thought process, like, how do you do it?
I don't know. Everybody certainly doesn't handle stress and react the same way through stress. Like I know my wife and I, we both handle stress, probably complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And, like one thought that I'll share is like, I remember as a kid, if I was ever stressed, or struggling with something, I would go on a run. Like I would just like go clear my thoughts and just like, I would just go try to run as hard and as fast as I could and like put whatever stress that is into like a positive energy and like be productive with it. I don't know if that's like kind of carried through as an adult now and into
It has,
as into my career and into a business world.
Kurt, I just want to hop in real quick because I know you well, and it just instantly popped into my mind. But like when you said like as a kid you would go on a run when you felt stressed. What I saw, man, and today I like saw like the parallel is like, dude, you dive into your business. Like when the business, like when there's stress in the business, it's just you run but you run at it.
Yep.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for a lot of people, they would cope with that stress maybe like just differently. Like I was going to say in a negative way, but I don't think it's negative. It's just different. Right. Where maybe it's, getting into, an argument or like taking an employee, for example, and blaming them for, whatever the like failure or the downturn or like whatever the struggle is. Or like, lashing out at a customer or, lashing out at, your family back at home. Like in my opinion, those are all like negative ways to handle stress. And so for me, and it's certainly different. Like I know I'm kind of wired a tad different than most people. And it's probably a little bit more like robotic, but it's like I just go back to like the processes and like the inputs and what can I do to, counteract whatever the stress is or the negative thing that's going on and just make it better. So yeah.
And is there like, in terms of that, because, there's this like in entrepreneurship, right, in business, not all the time, but a lot of times there's looming unknowns, there's looming risks, there's looming things. And so when you like run into the business, like, are those thoughts like coming back and back and back, like, or does it kind of like you see it, you recognize it, and it like goes away? Like, how does that, like, an unknown, right? Like, let's say you had like some big, I'm sure you've probably had this in your business, but like, have you had a time where it was like a big unknown and maybe it was only like a 1% chance of something coming out of this, but it could have been a huge liability that could have taken down your business?
Yeah.
Or like really, like, have you had
a few instances like that, things that have blown over and didn't end up, materializing to anything significant. But I would certainly stress in times like that. And, but again, like I've always just tried to figure out how to use that stress, in a positive way. And like I always go back to the processes. Like, let's just say, for example, it's a complaint from a customer. Hey, you missed, the fact that my AC doesn't work. Well, one, we have pictures in the report showing that it does work, but like there are examples like, of that where we've always tried to use it as like a learning experience and to get better and to make our inspection process more bulletproof and better.
I'm not like big things. Like, let's say like you had, I don't know your business, but like, let's say you have like a potential lawsuit or someone like, potential breach in security, and maybe your bank account might be getting wiped out. Like, like, have you had things that are like, this is like really, it's a small chance,
like existential risk,
but like existential risk that like isn't necessarily like in your control at the moment? Like, have you had situations like that?
Really good question. And I'll just answer it that I think about that all the time, like what's in my control and what's out of my control. And I simply just don't care about anything that's out of my control. Like, again, probably easier said than done for most people, but like, I don't know where that came from, but yeah, I mean, I have that conversation quite a bit, whether it's at home or with employees. Like to me, if something's outside of your control, you can't control what the housing market does. You can't control if somebody's a crazy person and they're gonna threaten to sue you. So yeah, I really try not to let that stuff impact me, and I just focus on what I can control. So there was an example really recently that came to mind. The inspection software that I use, it's incredible software, and these people, they live their lives like, how can we make this software the most valuable and the user friendly and make the best product for the customer and the inspector and everybody. And they allowed folks to share their templates with other inspectors, either sell it or just give it away. And so there was a few inspectors early on that used copywritten material from some inspection company, inspection software or inspection company. And these people now, 5-6 years later, their comments, that are copywritten for whatever reason, like it's silly to probably you or I or anybody listening, but they copywrote their comments, and you might say, hey, the window's leaking, which you and I would think like, hey, you can only say it a few different ways, like, but they copywrote their material, and now they found out that, hey, some of their comments are spread throughout the inspection software community. Now they're going through just suing everybody. So like, this was a very scary thing recently, an existential risk to many. But I saw the email come through, and it's like, hey, one of your reports was flagged. There's a comment in there that may have been, copywritten material. And it seemed like just a completely ridiculous resolution and like solution to this whole like copywritten problem. And so I looked at whatever the comment was, and it was a comment that I pulled from a Facebook page that sounded similar to the comment that was copywritten. Okay. Anyways, in my mind, I'm like, okay, so the solution from the software company and the settlement was, hey, we're going to restrict and lock every single report template, or every single report that you used this template, even if it's not in the actual report that goes to the customer, we're going to lock it. And for us, that was 13,000 home inspection reports over the last 6 years. And this all is unfolding in the last few weeks. And my immediate response was just like calm, because like, I'm like, okay, nothing about this makes any sense. Like, there's no way that you can lock 13,000 home inspection reports when we've maybe used this comment 15 different times. And it's simply just in our template bank, right? I'm not sure if any of this makes sense, but anyways, like the result of this whole thing just made no sense to me. And I was like, there's no way they're going to do this to every single inspection company, because everyone was losing their minds. Like the Facebook forums were just like everyone was like, I'm going to have to close my business down, and I'm going to get so many upset customers. I'm like, and so bringing this back to your question, which is like, okay, this stuff is like, it really just doesn't make sense. Like, it's out of most home inspectors' control. I'm not going to lose sleep on this thing. I gave it to one of my team members to like, get our template updated and like monitor what's going on, but like I'm pretty confident that this is going to blow over, and like, you know, none of us felt like we did anything malicious or like wrong or anything like at all. And I was confident that it would blow over. We got an email yesterday or 2 days ago basically saying like the entire thing blew over, and like, you know, our comment was flagged inadvertently, and you know, it's
so with that, yeah, I just respect how you take something like that and you look at it and you're like, what can I control versus what can I not control?
Yeah.
And it seems like you think about it rationally. You take whatever action is necessary, and then
all you can do.
And that's all you can do, and you move on. That's something that's cool about you intuitively and how you just naturally work, because I've at times in my life like have existential stuff like that, and it could drive me nuts.
Yeah.
It'll just keep coming to my mind and just kind of really reduce my productivity, reduce my happiness, reduce my enjoyment. And so for me personally, what's helped that is just like getting faith, right? Like getting faith in terms of God, the universe, really like expanding my scope out from like the exact like issue that I'm dealing with. It's more just like, hey, like we're doing the best that we can. We're handling the things like you mentioned that are in our control, and like what's meant to be is meant to be. Like if there's some like crazy existential thing that's gonna like take me down, like that's what was meant to happen. But but with that mentality, I'm able to keep like a really good mentality and trust and know that everything's gonna be okay. And that leads me to taking the best actions, the best course. For you, do you have like a higher level of trust? Like do you ever like bring it up to like that scale, or is it all just like so practically down to like the rationale?
So like I think a lot of people, if they're dealing with something, you know, struggling with something, they might, you know, pray or they might like hope. I'm not that individual, and for me it comes down to like what can I control? So yeah, like, you know, it's, if let's just say the real estate market's crashing, you know, I'm not going to like hope that everything, you know, just gets better. For me, it comes down to like, hey, what can I do? What actions can I take? What can I control myself? What can my team control? And that's what we're going to do to get the best outcome. So I'm like super, like, again, it goes back to the stress. I take whatever the stress is and I use it in a positive way to like initiate action, and not just like a little bit of action, like lots of action. So I think you and I talked about end of last year before how we had several years of like full on boom in the real estate world, you know, prices going up. We couldn't take on the number of inspections that people needed us to do. And, you know, we're growing like crazy. And then last year, the Fed started tightening, you know, you know, all the monetary policy, and interest rates started going up, and nothing happened, you know, literally for like 3-4 months. Like no one was buying houses. No one was selling houses. Our inspection volume went like way down. And it was like the first time that we were ever faced with like a serious like market downturn. And like, you know, you're seeing on the Facebook forums, like all these inspectors wanting to get out of the business and scared, and, you know, how am I going to put food on the table? So it's like very much a stressful time, like, you know, and we started, you know, just being fully transparent with the team, and hey, this is how we're going to do it. This is our action plan. And we just like crushed it for like 3, 4, 5 months. And we still are, and just picked up market share, didn't have to lay off anybody. And we came through this year, like early this year, kind of turned around the market, and people got used to the higher interest rates and started buying and selling houses again. And we just came through and like, boom, all of a sudden we have 15% of the market share, like coming into this year. And yeah, so, you know, we just kept the gas pedal down on marketing and getting better, improving our processes, adding new services. And so, yeah, we just used that stressful moment to crush it and pick up market share. And demolish the competition. Yeah. And add value to people. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was, for me, I mean, that was one of the scariest times in business, but also probably one of the most like fulfilling and, just makes me feel good that we made it through that, and my team stayed behind me. Nobody quit. Nobody left. We didn't have to lay off anybody. And I just think like we just handled that stress like really, really well. So
talking about running, right? And that's when you had mentioned that before, like what really came to my mind about you and like how you've incorporated that idea from your childhood into now is like, yeah, like shit got hard, shit got stressful. I mean, dude, like, yeah, it was tough in the real estate market.
Yep.
And you doubled down, right? Like you increased your marketing spend, you increased your time. Like you dove in, you're like, hey, like we're making this happen. And I think, having that mentality, like I feel like your employees, everyone was behind you because it's like, we're doing this, right?
Yep.
That confidence. And I was talking to Ear about this on the first podcast, which is this like idea of trust, right? And like, he originally thought that trust was like not being scared, but trust is being scared and doing it anyway. And I feel like that sounds like to me with you is like, hey, there's some fear, there's some this. It's like, but you go in hard.
Yeah.
And it's really, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there certainly was fear. And I communicated that to my team as, hey guys, if this continues, if the market stays this slow, we're going to be forced to, lay people off eventually. But, we're going to go through 6 months first and see what happens. And I was just fully transparent with my team and communicated that, those fears and those emotions and things that, that I and everybody was having. But it was, being poised and just staying like, grounded and really just focusing on the inputs that we could control, not focusing on the outputs. So it's kind of crazy how it kind of all breaks down to pretty simple concepts like that in business.
Yeah.
So
inputs versus outputs. Just come back, feel the fear. It's okay. Dive into it, focus on what we can control. Sounds relatively simple, probably a little bit harder said than done.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah.
Harder done than said.
Probably just thousands of examples in my life where I've kind of been through like little stuff like that that's, shaped me. So yeah, it does come a bit natural, but it's hard too, man. Business it's hard. It certainly requires a thick skin. I don't think everybody's like cut out, to be an entrepreneur and to run a business and grow a business. Yeah, some days I wake up and I want to run away and quit and, not have to deal with the problems. But yeah, it's hard, man. Lots of ups and downs, but you just try to keep it steady keel and keep it going.
I think that's where that North Star is most important. that compass, where it's like the times are tough, and it's like, do you have a why? Do you have a meaning that's strong enough on those days where it's like, those worst days to take another step forward? And
for sure.
I feel like you have that why with this business. And honestly, it's like we were saying, I feel like you would do it with any business because your why is just creating value. And
yeah, it's just enjoying the journey. Yeah. Creating value and just making a difference. It's fun.
Yeah.
But with that, there's a lot of, ups and downs and bad days and shitty days, but for sure.
I feel like you love challenges too. Like you dive in, you just like, and I think that's something you naturally have, but I also think that's something that can be like learned, even a little later in life, because like I grew up and for me, it was always like avoid the challenge, right? Avoid the risk, avoid the headache, right? That was what was always taught to me. And
Yeah, take the easy route rather than the hard.
Yeah. Not like take the easy route, but it's more like, oh, there's like all that like danger out there. Like, let's do everything we can to like avoid it, as opposed to just like focusing on like what's there. It's like, okay, we've got these things here. Let's like understand it, but we're going there. But
Sure.
that's something that we can learn just through experience, right? It's like you gotta go and you gotta like jump into the fire and experience it. I feel like that's just the best way to learn. And if you want to continue to avoid avoid that, like you can do it, but like the biggest growth comes from like jumping in. And I feel like
100%.
this is a learnable trait that
Yeah.
we're talking about.
I do as well. I traditionally, through most of my life, have avoided conflict. Again, like if I'm in a conflict or I'm stressed with something, I would go on a run and go put it into like that positive energy. And I don't mean it in the sense that like, you know, conflict is like an actual conflict with somebody, like an argument or whatever. But I heard a term recently. It's the obstacle is the way. And I don't know where I heard that or who I heard it from. But I think in business, like the obstacle is the way, like that is really like powerful. It's a very powerful thought. And now like every time I'm faced with, you know, a conflict or a struggle or like a challenge or something, it's like, okay, instead of like taking the easy way out or just avoiding whatever it is that, you know, that issue is, or not having that difficult conversation with somebody, now it's like, okay, shit, I know that that's what I need to do to get past this hurdle and to make it through that next, you know, step of growth.
I feel like what makes it easier too, but that, or easier, just like it's just what the obstacle is the way is like, again, that input versus output mentality, which is like, if we're so focused on the output and we like need that output, it's like it'll make us more susceptible to be afraid of the obstacles, right? Because it's like, oh shit, that obstacle is getting in the way of like what I want. Oh shit, we're overthinking it. But if we're like in the input mentality, that means literally the input, the obstacle is the way. Like that's the input. It's like, fuck yeah, right? It's like we can reframe it and be like, dude, this is the process. This is a challenge. And we can give ourselves that emotional reward that we would have gotten once we got the $1 million in revenue. We can give ourselves that emotional reward by having that conversation.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, now we get that dopamine, that those neurochemicals, we get that feeling in our mind and our body every single day with every action that we take.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah,
it's majestic.
I could not agree more. And I think it goes back to this whole conversation around like, just like setting goals and stuff. Like if you're so focused on that goal and you only get that big dopamine rush when you hit your $1 million sales goal, like, dude, that's so sad, because once you get that big dopamine rush, like what's next? Like you're not
10 million, right?
But
if
you frame it like we're talking about, where it's, you know, you're getting these small dopamine hits like every single time you have that difficult conversation, or you know, solve whatever the problem is, or you fix the issue on the website, or, you know, you roll out a new home inspection service, or, you know, you have a conversation to train your employee better. Like that, I mean, that's how I look at it, and that's how I wake up every day. And like every time I, you know, get past one of those things, it feels good, and it feels like you're building something bigger. Yeah. And I don't have any sort of goal where it's like, oh, you know, I have like a silly goal. We're going to do 10,000 home inspections a year. But who knows if I'll ever get there or when I'll get there. And that's not my focus like every single day. And honestly, if and when I get there, it's probably not going to like do anything for me. You know, it's like, well, why is like 10,000 is just an arbitrary number. Like, why isn't my goal 100,000? Why isn't my goal 1 million inspections a year? Yeah, I just don't think, like, for me, goals don't really matter. It's really just about like making the best process. You know, it's the journey. It's like getting past those those little roadblocks every little step of the way and building something great.
We live life that I know for sure once. There may be stuff after, but we live it once. And to build a business to $1 million could take a few years, right? To build a business to $10 million, it could take a few more years. And so if we're going to sacrifice everything for 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, whatever it is, for that one moment, I feel like we miss everything.
Well said.
I love how amped we were just getting, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I feel that energy and emotion of like, dude, this is something that means a lot to both of us.
Yep.
Is like living life to the fullest. Like, this is what it's about, right? Is like facing that challenge, facing that obstacle, diving into it and having fun and realizing like, dude, whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Yep.
It's like, and we're doing everything that we can. We're doing everything in our control.
Yep.
But we're going to enjoy it, man.
Yep.
It's like, you're also very competitive, Kurt. You're one of the most competitive people I know. I love it.
For sure.
It's epic.
Yeah.
I feel like that's part of like what gets interplayed into here, into the business, into the challenge, right? Is like, dude, you don't want to play against Kurt Stein down. You know, you might be up 20-10 in spike ball and you're playing at 21. He's not going to give up. Like easily a streak. And it's so cool again, because it's like this, to me, it just keeps coming back to the outcome. Like, to you, it's not about the outcome, right? Someone that's so focused on winning that game is going to get scared and not going to be able to hit that shot, not going to be able to like go for it when you need to go for it. And with you, it's like
it comes down to each individual point or shot,
and enjoying it, right? Enjoying that process in that competition, because we're having fun, and and the goal is to win. But like, that's not what it's all about. It's about the process, about when you're down, like, what's that feeling, and like, how do you use that, right? And how do you have fun with that?
Yep.
Really, really cool.
Oh man, nothing like coming back from down against somebody and coming back and beating them. Love that underdog kind of mentality, like the Jaguars. Moved to Jacksonville and just immediately adopted the worst team in the league as my team. Just 0-16 or whatever they were. They won 2 games a year, coming from the Steelers, perennial like Super Bowl contenders. I just love that. Yeah, that underdog mentality. So
awesome. So another thing, back to processes and systems, because you're so good with that. One thing you had mentioned lately to our group, to the Account Buddy group, is the new system that you created for you and Stephanie. So Stephanie's your wife.
Yep.
And how much that's helped you and your relationship. And then actually, I believe 3 or 4 of us in the group now have incorporated, including myself, have incorporated your new system that you created. And it's, dude, the feedback from me and everyone has been just amazing. It's been amazing. Why did you create that system, and what is the system?
Yeah. So Stephanie and I, we've been together for 8-9 years, maybe coming up on 10, married for a few. And, we both live pretty busy lives, running a company. She's busy in real estate. And we just have a lot going on at all times. And we've struggled at times to, just with communication. And, it would lead to, arguments and fights and things like that. That's probably common with any couple. And we still do. And I'm not, saying that, this thing that we have, implemented is the holy grail and it's, made everyone's life perfect. It's, not, but it's a huge step in the right direction. And what it is we just, basically, we found ourselves being reactive and not proactive in a lot of things in our relationship. So this was really more of like an engineering solution that was put in place to help us, and that sounds ridiculous, but like basically, what we did is we just set a time on the calendar, sit down for an hour every single week and talk about things that are important to us. So that when we first sat down, we came up with a list of things that we wanted to talk about, that each of us cares about. So it might be, kindness, right? It might be our schedules for the week. It might be intimacy. It might be, finances. It might be, a date night. Just all those like little things that, if we're not being proactive with it and setting aside that time, then you either don't talk about it, or when you do talk about it, you're upset with it. And it's been a game changer for us. Like it's been really good. Certainly like maybe awkward in the early stages, and, maybe like difficult to have some of those conversations and to, and get really proactive and like regular with these conversations. But like, as we've been doing it and being consistent with it, it just has like normalized everything. And like, if before there was a conversation that was difficult to have, now it's like easy to have. And it's just been really good. So I would encourage like anybody that is having any sort of like struggles in a relationship, like just to over communicate. And I think this is a really good tool and like strategy to use to improve communication with your partner, and just discuss those things that are important to you on a regular basis. So I shared it with the guys in the group, and 2 or 3 or 4 of you guys have adopted it, and it's just everyone's had pretty much nothing but positive things to say about it. Yeah. After you get through the first couple awkward, meetings and conversations. But it's been good.
I've adopted it myself, and I feel like there's so much value in it, which is, as you mentioned, it's, so some of the viewers can get an understanding of just like what it practically is you literally just sit down, you talk for about an hour, you choose. I use yours as a base, but you really choose the categories in your life that are important, right? Like, if you have kids, like the kids are one category. Your personal finances, are we playing as a team together? Is a big one, right? Are we communicating well? Did we have a date night? Like these inputs, right? That's like
that's what they are. They're all inputs for sure. Rather than like, focusing on like outputs, which is like,
I guess, but it's like, what are we doing, right? I guess outputs it would be stuff like happiness, right? And how are we feeling? It's more like, are we doing the things that make us happy, right? Are we doing the thing? Are we communicating? Are we doing the date night? Are we playing as a team? Are we going to the gym together, right? Brittany and I go to the gym together. Are we doing these things that invest in our bond, that invest in our relationship? And what's so powerful about the system is, at the end of the day, it is just having a recurring time to come together and communicate, and having an intentional set of criteria that you sit down and you think about these things that are really important to each of you, and have a frame setting conversation where you're both calm, and then it gives you an opportunity to continuously come back to those things. Because I feel like it's the same thing in our accountability group. We all have our shared accountability tracker with our different metrics and our different things in our life that matter. And what I noticed in earlier times in my life, when I didn't have something like that, I might sit down one day and think, man, like, I love giving back to the community. Like, that's something that lights me up. I love exercise. That's something that lights me up. And you think about these things, and then you just go and live your life. And then all of a sudden, 2 months later, you're like, what? I didn't invest in this. I didn't invest in this. And then you
feel like empty.
You feel empty. You're like, you're sitting there thinking like, why the fuck am I so empty inside? Like, why am I hating my life right now? Why am I not happy? Why am I not fulfilled? Why am I all this? And it's just like, because life happens. You get pulled in this direction. You watch this YouTube channel and they say, you need to go and make a bunch of money. And you're watching this guy with his Lamborghini. And he's like, well, I need to. And so now all of a sudden you're like running after this like Lamborghini and you just don't even know what you're doing. And so I think having some time to get quiet with yourself, and if you have a partner, with your partner, those are like two things, but it's the same, I think, general principle, which is be intentional, know your why, know what you want, know your inputs, set it up, and just come back once a week. Come back once a week and touch base with yourself and be like, hey, am I doing these things? Am I getting off track? Am I getting on track? And what also works for me is like once a quarter, like reevaluating, like, am I working on, do I still have the same why? Am I still working on that same path? Because we change as individuals. So, that may get stale, but take that time to think once a week, just come back and dude, it's been game changer.
Yeah, it's really good. And that frequency might be different for different couples. Like some people, it might be better to do that once a day, sitting at the dinner table at night. It might be better to do it once a month or once a year. But like we found that once a week is like a really good frequency to sit down and just have that, that good conversation with one another and get on the same page.
Yeah.
It's been powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I understand what you mean. Like how you could have different frequency. Like Kurt, when you first suggested, I'm bringing this back to the individual tracker, and you had mentioned that, I don't think like this is the first year of accountability. I don't think anyone else adopted that. Like I think I just did it that year, but it was your idea. I did it and I was doing it daily. And dude, that was nuts. It was amazing, dude. Holy shit. I was like high on life, man. Cause like every day was like, was I investing in my relationships with my family? Was I investing in meditation? Was I investing in this? Was I investing in the things that I really, truly love and care about? And I feel like when we actually take some time to sit down and think about it, no worries. If you've just been on autopilot, right? I feel like if you actually sit down and think about it, your things that you truly care about might be a little bit different than the way that you've been running. So it's been cool. It's been awesome. And again, this is just like why I'm so pumped to have you on the podcast, because I feel like it's your brain that like created these systems that have like revolutionized my life.
Love hearing that.
It's like fucking dope.
Love that. Yeah. I don't think I invented any of this stuff, but to be able to share it with somebody that maybe wasn't aware of it or just didn't have that practice, certainly makes me feel good. And man, just having an impact on somebody's life is pretty gratifying and fulfilling. So
it's all about providing value.
Yeah,
right?
Man.
It's like you do it at a bigger scale, when it comes to business, but I can say like you've definitely impacted my life.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
The other thing, so now coming back and just getting my mind jogging, is accountability and that group that we have, the 8 of us, right? It comes back into that intentionality thing of knowing what we want and then having a group of people that can do it together. What does accountability mean to you, and like what has it given you over the past couple years that we've been doing this?
Yeah. First and foremost, I think it's friendship. I think a lot of folks, at least in the stage of their life that we're in, in our 30s, and lots of folks are getting married and having kids, they tend to, go inward, and spend, obviously it makes sense. Like you spend more time with your family and your kids and things like that. But I think a lot of people lose, their friends at that stage of life. And to get and to develop relationships with, 7 other guys, that's as strong as we have, and as good of friends as we all are is awesome. And it's something that I think is special that not many people get to have, at this stage of our lives. So I think it's great for that, but also just bouncing ideas off of one another. I mean, 8 successful people all in their own ways. They'd all have great ideas and great ways to get the most out of life. And there's groups and things that people can join like what we do, but I'm pretty sure you got to spend like tens of thousands of dollars to join some of those groups, and we just have something was developed organically here in Jacksonville, and it's been great, man.
Yeah.
So friendship and just like being able to have folks to talk to, if you're struggling with something in business or at home or with your health or whatever it is. And I feel like we've all improved our lives, and we're in a better spot today than when we all first started meeting and getting meeting with one another. So
yeah, I feel like there's this loneliness epidemic that's
for sure,
that a lot of people feel lonely and disconnected, right? Like almost as we get more connected with media, people feel more disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually something that like I've at times felt being an entrepreneur and at I've had teams, and sometimes I've just been working by myself, and so it can get lonely at times, sitting at home working on something. And then sometimes I hop in my car and I look around in all the cars, and like everyone's in their car by themselves. Like it's like I'm looking around, I'm like, whoa. It's like actually like take a minute to like drive and like see how many people are sitting in their car by themselves.
Yeah.
And like, we've developed it as a society so much faster than our brains have. Our brains are still that reptilian brain, from way back, and
that craves human interaction,
that craves community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we grew up in tribes, where you go out, you hunt as a group, you got 10 guys are going out to go hunt, bring it back for the community to eat, for the children, for the women, and then you dance around a fire and you sing songs. And it's like, it's important to get that in your life.
Yeah.
And it's something that I don't think enough, people think about. And it's something that I've really feel like I've gotten through this group is that, man. Like literally
the tribe
on our retreat, we're there and we are, sitting around a fire, talking, singing songs, laughing, playing, doing all sorts of stuff, and just having a really good time. It's something powerful, and I think it happened organically for us, and you can also pay $10,000 to do it, but actually it didn't happen. I mean, it kind of happened organically, like we became friends, but I want to give a shout out to Sean Pointer for having this idea,
for sure.
Right? Like Sean had the intention of like, dude, like we've got this good group of guys, like let's get intentional about this. Let's meet once a quarter and let's create accountability. So,
but it happened organically in the sense that like, he wasn't approached by somebody else to like, hey, you should do this, or you should join my accountability group.
Yeah. And pay like X money. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, so groups like GoBundance are phenomenal, but they're not like, they're just, it's not, it's just different than what we have. So,
it's very different.
And it's very expensive.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, we talked about how it happened organically. So maybe some of the listeners here are like, fuck, like I wish this could like just happen organically, but I wanted to bring it back and tell them like, no, like Sean Pointer, again,
made it happen. Yeah.
And like, he brought us together and he had this idea and we were all like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, if you're out there and you're feeling lonely and you're feeling unintentional and you're like, dude, like, and then if you can count a few buddies, like you don't need to start with 8, man.
Right.
Like if you got a couple buddies out there, it's like, dude, let's the 3 of us get together. Let's meet, once a quarter, once a month, figure out your own process, but like get intentional with it. Or dude, if you guys want, comment, here, and I'd be happy to provide more insight, more value on the actual systems and structures that we use. Because I feel like that's something really practical that I feel like we can provide a lot of value to
For sure.
to people out there
Yeah.
on this system and this structure to really combat the loneliness and
Yeah.
unintentionality out there.
Yeah. And like thinking back on it, before we started this group, I probably had, after my like early to mid 20s of like partying and like going out with friends like every night, I'd say my late 20s, there was like a loneliness. There was like a yearning for like a group like this, especially the early days of business, when you're usually working long hours and, building something. And I remember continuously thinking, man, like, how can I join or like be a part of a group like this that you can bounce ideas off of and, that brings all that sort of value. And then like, this popped up, I forget exactly how I got approached to be in the group, but it's been great, man. It's been like, it was like exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think like, as you're saying, anybody listening, like could easily start something like this. It's literally just, there's not a whole lot to it. It's just being intentional with finding some, they could be like-minded or they could be, not like-minded, but, finding just folks that want to better their lives and, meet on a regular basis and talk about it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's really cool. And yeah, we've formed such deep friendships and bonds through it. It's something truly special. What are you grateful for?
Man, a lot. I would say just the gift that we have to wake up every day and to make a difference in this world. And then all the beautiful stuff that I have in this life that I get to call mine, my wife, my daughter, my friends. Truly grateful.
We have a lot to be grateful for. Wake up every day and just live this life. It's really, really awesome.
Getting to sit in this setting, nature around us, the water. A lot of beauty in this world that most people will just walk right past and, forget about because they're so busy with whatever it is. But enjoying that journey, I think, is important.
You want to jump in the water when we're done talking here?
I don't want to jump in the water. I've been trying to avoid shivering this whole time.
Yeah,
it's pretty cold.
Yeah, it's pretty cold.
Yeah.
Would have been
I think
nice
it's
to have another layer.
Low 50s when I woke up this morning. It's probably close to maybe high 50s right now.
Yeah.
Pretty chilly. I think you've had a little bit more direct sun.
Yeah, you've been facing another way. But dude, Kurt, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for your beautiful energy. Thank you for sitting in this setting with me and sharing this interaction. And thank you for providing value to the listeners.
You're welcome, man. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Love you, man.
Love you too.